Millionaire sees struggling mom on street. What she's hiding leaves him speechless. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Knock, knock, knock. The sound of knocking echoed from the closed meeting room doors. Ethan Reynolds lifted his head from the glowing wood conference table, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. Mary, his assistant, broke the heavy silence in the room with urgency in her voice. Mr. Reynolds, the school called. Liam still hasn't been picked up. Ethan braced his hands on the table and closed his eyes with a deep sigh. The luxury watch on his wrist read 4:17. 3 hours late. He had promised Grace he would always pick up their son on time. That promise lodged like a nail in his chest every time he broke it. Get the car ready. I'm leaving now, Ethan said quietly, his voice devoid of the energy it once held at the start of the meeting. He walked out of the boardroom, down a hallway lit with soft yellow lights that felt more like a fogged-up memory than a space he inhabited. 46 years old, CEO of the largest tech firm in the state, owner of houses, cars, and multi-million-dollar ventures, and yet still failing at the one thing he couldn't afford to, showing up for his son. The car pulled up to the school. Liam was sitting alone under the awning, clutching a programming book, his back stiff, his face unreadable. Ethan approached. Son, I'm sorry. I stopped waiting a while ago, Liam replied coldly, without looking up. The words were short, but they carried a weight Ethan couldn't begin to explain. On the drive home, no one spoke. Outside, a light rain began to fall. Ethan had forgotten how cold spring could feel in Portland. Inside the car, the only sounds were the rhythmic swish of the wipers and the steady beat of his own guilt-ridden heart. When they got home, Liam went straight to his room. Ethan lingered at the half-closed door, frozen, hand resting on the doorknob. But he didn't go in. Instead, he walked down to the living room, silent, cavernous, and poured himself a glass of whiskey from the cabinet. On the opposite wall hung a photo of their family, Grace, Liam, and Ethan, framed in soft maple. Grace was smiling brightly, her eyes almost saying, "You're doing just fine." Ethan raised his glass and stared into her gaze. "I'm trying, Grace. I really am." Outside, the rain picked up, but inside, all Ethan could hear was the voice of his conscience and the cold silence of a son growing more distant with every broken promise. In that moment, a door inside Ethan's heart shut just a little more. He didn't yet know that in a few short days, another door would quietly open, his front door. His heart's door, opened by a gentle knock. In the pouring rain, with tears and 4 shivering children, a woman named Maya would arrive carrying a new definition of family, for both Ethan and Liam. But for now, Ethan knew only this: he was tired, and that this spring, even though the flowers were blooming outside, his home had long forgotten the scent of life. The Portland sky was thick with gray clouds, and the relentless autumn rain seemed like it would never stop. Cold droplets lashed against the windshield, leaving blurry streaks as the wipers struggled to clear the view. Ethan Reynolds sat silently behind the wheel of his sleek black SUV, eyes fixed on the rain-soaked road ahead. He had just left the office after a marathon meeting with the executive board of Reynolds Innovations. The tech empire he had built was on the verge of launching a new product, every detail urgent, every plan critical. But his mind was no longer there. Not since Grace passed. No meeting, no project, no polished rollout could ever fill the void she left behind. The car slowed as he entered the old neighborhood near his home. A ritual of sorts, just to buy himself a few quiet minutes before facing the silence of the estate. But this time, something caught his eye. Under a small awning outside a weathered grocery store, a woman stood shivering in the downpour. Her dark brown hair clung to her face, and her thin coat was soaked through, offering little protection from the cold. Huddled beside her were 4 small girls, same age, same height, and startlingly identical features. They clung to one another like a forgotten bouquet, abandoned in a storm. The woman was speaking to the shop owner, but the man only shook his head before slamming the door shut. She turned around, her face to the road, eyes hollow and exhausted. One of the girls tugged on her coat and whispered, "Mommy, I'm hungry." Ethan didn't know what made him hit the brakes. Maybe it was her eyes, equal parts fierce and desperate. Maybe it was the girls. They reminded him of Liam when he was younger, eyes silently pleading for one more night with his father. He lowered the window. "Do you need help?" The woman flinched. Instinctively, she shielded her daughters, then nodded slightly. "We just need a little food. I'll pay it back when I can. Get in. There's a diner nearby that's still open." He didn't wait for an answer. He unlocked the back doors. The girls looked to their mother for approval. She hesitated, then whispered, "Go ahead. It'll be okay." "I'm Ethan," he said once they were inside, raindrops trailing off their coats and onto the car floor. Maya Bennett," she replied, eyes fixed on her children. "This is Lily, Rose, Daisy, and Violet." "Quadruplets?" Ethan asked, glancing in the rearview mirror as he pulled away. Maya nodded. "They're 5. I know the names sound like something out of a fairy tale, but they're my whole world." The diner sat on the corner of a quiet street, its warm yellow lights glowing behind fogged-up windows. They sat at a booth by the window, and slowly the warmth began to replace the chill. The girls ate quietly, too quietly. Every movement was polite to the point of heartbreaking. No laughter, no bickering, just wide eyes occasionally asking their mother's permission to reach for another slice of bread. Ethan ordered dessert, despite Maya's gentle protest. "You don't have to do this. We'll be fine. They need to eat. And I can do this one small thing." Silence hung for a moment. Then Maya spoke, softly, as if afraid of admitting it to herself. "My ex-husband left when I chose to leave the life he controlled. I never thought I'd be begging for food for my children. But today, I did." Ethan looked at her. He saw something familiar in her. Maybe the helplessness in the face of something you can't fix. Maybe it was the fierce love in her eyes when she spoke of her daughters, just like Grace once looked at him before she died. "Where are you planning to stay tonight?" Maya looked down at her hands. "A motel a few blocks away. But I don't have enough money. We were going to sleep in the car, or maybe at a gas station." Ethan paused. He wasn't the kind of man to bring strangers home. But Maya wasn't a threat. She was a desperate mother. And those little girls, they shouldn't be sleeping out in the rain. "I have a small apartment above my garage, separate from the house. If you need somewhere to stay tonight, it's yours. Just until you figure things out." Maya's eyes widened. "I can't accept charity." "It's not charity. It's help," Ethan said gently. "And I can offer it. That's all." She stayed silent for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay." For the girls. On the drive back, the city lights shimmered in the rain. The girls had fallen asleep in each other's arms, their heads resting against their mother like delicate petals. Maya sat quietly, still wary, but with a softened expression in her eyes. At the estate, Ethan led them through a side gate. The apartment above the garage had a cozy living area, a small kitchen, and 2 bedrooms. Simple but clean and warm. Maya stepped inside cautiously, as if afraid it might vanish if she moved too fast. "I'll bring some towels and pajamas for the girls," Ethan said from the doorway. "If you need anything, just ring the bell." "Thank you." "Ethan," Maya whispered. "I won't forget this. Just sleep well tonight. That's enough." He turned and disappeared into the soft darkness. Back in the main house, Ethan paused outside Liam's room. The nightlight was still on. Liam was asleep, arms wrapped around the worn teddy bear Grace had given him years ago. Ethan stood there for a long time, thinking of Maya, of the girls, soaked and shivering, of the way she held them like she could shield them from the whole world. And for the first time in many months, Ethan didn't feel completely alone in his own home. The Portland sunset painted the sky in shades of crimson as Ethan leaned against the second-floor balcony railing. The tea in his hand had long gone cold. He didn't notice. His eyes were fixed on the small apartment above the garage, where Maya and the 4 identical little girls were temporarily staying. From here, he could see a warm yellow light spilling through the thin curtains. A small, cautious figure moved inside, then disappeared from view. "They're not responsible for their father's sins," Ethan murmured to himself like a mantra, hoping it was enough to untangle the web in his chest. That day, he had looked her up. The name Maya Bennett wasn't unfamiliar, But it took a while for the pieces in his memory to fall into place. Maya had once been the wife of Derek Bennett, the man who betrayed Ethan 7 years ago in a bitter tech dispute that nearly destroyed his company. Derek hadn't just stolen proprietary software. He'd leaked false rumors that tanked Reynolds Innovations' value and shattered investor trust. What a twist of fate, Ethan muttered, gripping the edge of the railing tighter. I'm sheltering his family. He didn't know whether to laugh or rage. But the fury wasn't sharp anymore. What remained was a heavy weight, like fate was testing his resolve. Inside the small apartment, Maya sat on a cushioned, worn but clean, armchair. The 4 girls lay asleep on a single fold-out bed, nestled together. She had just soothed Violet, the youngest, after a coughing spell that left her hiccuping through tears. The room had fallen quiet now, broken only by the slow spin of a ceiling fan and the distant hum of traffic outside. Maya stared down at the sketch pad on her lap. The drawings were rough, incomplete. Child-sized chairs, low bookshelves, soft lighting. Ideas for a child-friendly living space, the kind she once dreamed of designing before everything fell apart. A light flicked on across the main house's balcony. Ethan's silhouette appeared in the window glass. Maya froze. She knew she couldn't run from the truth forever. And Ethan, the man who had offered her shelter, deserved to know. The next morning, as Ethan poured himself a cup of coffee, Maya stood silently in the kitchen doorway. We need to talk, she said softly, her gaze steady. Ethan motioned for her to come in. He sat down in front of his steaming mug. She hesitated, gathering herself, then pulled out the chair across from him. I'm Maya Bennett, she began, her voice quiet but unwavering. The ex-wife of Derek Bennett. Ethan didn't flinch. He merely raised an eyebrow slightly, confirming what he already suspected. Maya continued, I didn't realize who you were, not until my daughter noticed the Reynolds logo on a street sign and asked about it. I haven't told them anything. They're too young to understand. He nodded slowly. You don't owe me an explanation, but I do want to understand. Are you still in contact with him? Maya shook her head instantly. I left nearly a year ago. Derek never accepted that I wanted financial independence. He controlled everything. Our accounts, my phone, friends, work. When I pushed back, it became hell. Ethan felt something twist inside his chest. It wasn't his pain, but her words hit something deep. Grace, his late wife, had once fought illness in silence, never wanting to burden him. Quiet suffering in women always made Ethan feel helpless. I left with nothing but a few clothes and my old sketch pad, Maya continued. We lived in our car, then in shelters. I'm not asking for pity, but I won't let my children be dragged back into that life. Ethan set his mug down. His hand trembled slightly. Derek ruined me once, he said hoarsely. It took my company 3 years to recover. I didn't think I'd ever forgive him. But you're right. The girls aren't responsible. Silence settled over them like a heavy cloth. Not suffocating, but weighted with things unsaid. You can ask us to leave, Maya said finally. I wouldn't blame you. But please, not yet. Ethan shook his head. I'm not asking you to leave. But I do think we need ground rules. No more secrets. We live on the same property. For the kids, we need honesty. Agreed, Maya nodded. And for the first time that morning, the edge of a smile tugged at her lips. That afternoon, Ethan took Liam to a used bookstore near the park. When they returned to the gate, they saw Maya and the girls watering the garden. The girls' hair was tied back neatly, their eyes bright despite dirt on their hands. Liam stopped in his tracks, surprised. Violet, the youngest, smiled shyly at him and waved. Liam hesitated, then awkwardly waved back. Can I help them water the plants? Liam asked his father. Ethan didn't say anything, just nodded slightly, in a way only his son would notice. Liam dashed across the yard, his shoes crunching on the soft grass. Laughter followed, a sound Ethan had thought lost forever. That night, Ethan sat silently by the fireplace in the main house. The flames danced, casting flickering light on a face lined more deeply since Grace's passing. In his hands was an old photograph, Grace, with her thick black curls, laughing in a field of chrysanthemums. I'm trying, Ethan whispered. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, but Liam's laughing again. Outside the window, the light from the garage apartment still glowed. And for the first time in years, Ethan's house wasn't just a place to live. It was beginning to feel like a home. The mansion, once echoing only with the solitary footsteps of Ethan Reynolds, was now filled with new sounds, timid whispers, the patter of tiny feet running down wooden hallways, and something he hadn't heard in far too long: children's laughter. The next morning, the atmosphere in the house remained tentative. Maya had risen early, quietly brewing coffee and tidying up the kitchen, though it was already spotless. She left a note on the counter for Ethan. "Thank you for giving me and my daughters a peaceful night. We won't stay long." Ethan read the words with a heavy heart. He knew the feeling of always being prepared to leave, of living in spaces that weren't truly yours. He thought back to the months after Grace passed, how every room in the vast mansion seemed like a painful reminder. As he stepped into the kitchen, he spotted Hazel, trying to drag a chair to reach a cereal box on a high shelf. When she noticed him, she froze, stepping back as if she'd done something wrong. "It's okay," he said gently. "Let me help you." Hazel gave a small nod. Her wide eyes were still cautious, but no longer frightened. Maya entered right after, her oversized sweater hiding the thin frame of a mother who had carried 4 daughters. "I'm sorry. Hazel just wanted to have breakfast a little early." "Don't worry," Ethan interrupted, quietly pouring more coffee. "This house has needed a little more movement for a long time." A squeal came from upstairs. Then laughter. Poppy's voice echoed. "Juniper took my stuffed bear." Maya instinctively turned to run up the stairs, but Ethan raised a hand. "I'll go check." He walked up and opened the door to the guest room. All 4 girls were building a pillow fort, the room in cheerful chaos. Juniper wore a napkin as a chef's hat, cooking soup by stirring a pencil in a plastic bowl. Poppy chased after her, demanding her bear back. Ivy sat quietly in the corner, reading an old comic book Ethan had once bought for Liam. And Hazel, now calm, carefully folded the blanket on the bed. "Mr. Ethan," Hazel whispered, "are you mad we made a mess?" Ethan looked around. Instead of mess, he saw life. A room marked by the presence of children, of little souls searching for safety. "Not all," he smiled. "I think this place feels a lot more alive with you all here." Breakfast that morning was livelier than it had been in years. Ethan added toast, fresh strawberries, and eggs to the table. Maya sat silently, watching her daughters eat as if she could hardly believe it. Now and then, her eyes met Ethan's, full of silent gratitude. When Liam appeared at the kitchen door, hair tousled and half asleep, he stopped abruptly. "Dad, who are they?" Ethan stood up and rested a hand on his son's shoulder. "Liam, this is Miss Maya and her daughters. They'll be staying with us for a few days. Can you say hello?" Liam glanced at the girls, who looked up at him curiously. "Hi, I'm Liam," he mumbled, heading to the fridge. Hazel stepped forward hesitantly. "Do you have a game console?" Liam paused, turning toward Ethan for guidance. Ethan simply nodded. "Well, if you want to play Mario, come on," Liam said, walking off without waiting. Maya looked at Ethan, surprise evident in her eyes. "I didn't think the girls would be invited to play with anyone." "And I," Ethan replied, "didn't think Liam would invite anyone in a very long time." That afternoon, while Maya tidied the backyard, she noticed Ethan standing beside a wooden swing Grace had once adored. The garden, once filled with lavender, was now patchy with weeds and a few wilted pots. Grace loved this place, Ethan said, not facing her, but speaking honestly. She wanted Liam to grow up around nature, not just screens and tech. Now it's so quiet. Maya didn't answer right away. She bent down and picked a surviving sprig of lavender. "Silence can be peaceful," she said softly, "but sometimes it's just loneliness." Ethan turned to her, watching the small woman framed by the amber dusk. "You and your girls can stay longer, if you need to," he said. The invitation left his lips like a whisper, but it carried weight. "Thank you," Maya said, eyes brimming. "I didn't expect that, but for my daughters, I won't say no." That evening, Ethan passed by the living room and saw Liam and the girls playing a word-guessing game. For the first time in over 2 years, he heard his son laugh. Not a sarcastic laugh or a forced one, but a real, joyous sound. Maya walked out of the kitchen, carrying mugs of hot chocolate for the kids. When she handed one to Ethan, she whispered, "Thank you, not just for the shelter, but for giving them their first laugh in months." Ethan looked at her, his gaze tender. "No, it's your girls who brought laughter back to this house." Outside, a gentle Portland rain began to fall. But inside the mansion, warmth was returning. And within Ethan's heart, something long frozen had started to melt, slowly but surely. The spring rain faded softly on the glass roof of the garage. Inside the warm, cozy space above, where Maya and her girls were temporarily staying, a gentle yellow light spilled over the simple kitchen table. A large piece of paper lay on the table, filled with smudged pencil sketches and splotches of pastel powder from Hazel's small, color-stained fingers. Each child was quietly immersed in her own world. But something had shifted. The tension in the air had lifted. Something like hope had begun to bloom. Across the estate, in his study, Ethan stood in silence, fingertips grazing the edge of a newly redesigned desk, crafted under Maya's vision. The soft-carved natural oak and the repositioned window, now drawing in just the right light, transformed the room. Once a sterile space for dry financial reports and lifeless Zoom meetings, the room now felt alive. Every detail whispered that someone had listened, understood, and cared about the man behind the CEO title. He sat down, opened a small drawer, and found a handwritten label Maya had added, "Each day is a new chance." Ethan smiled. How long had it been since a simple phrase had warmed his heart? That evening, Maya placed a tea tray on the small table in the main house's secondary kitchen, where she had begun helping Ethan organize cupboards as a quiet gesture of gratitude for his generosity. The girls had been tucked in by Amber, Ethan's longtime housekeeper. Liam was in his room, lost in lines of code. "What do you think of the new workspace?" Maya asked, her tone light but edged with nervousness. Ethan nodded, his gaze sincere. "It makes me want to sit down and start over." "Start over?" She tilted her head. "Yeah," he paused. "Not just work. I'd forgotten what it's like to live in a space that has soul. You reminded me." Maya clutched her teacup. She wasn't used to compliments. For too long, she had lived in fear, where even small victories were questioned and diminished. But this time, it felt genuine. No subtext. No manipulation. "Thank you for trusting me," she said, her eyes finally meeting his without flinching. The next morning, Ethan led the whole crew, Maya, the girls, and Liam, to a small patch of land behind the mansion. It had once been an herb garden Grace had planted while she was alive, now overgrown and forgotten. "I want to bring it back to life," Ethan said quietly. Grace always said kids grow better when they're raised alongside something being planted. Trees, love, dreams. Maya stilled. She understood the emptiness that lingered when someone you love is gone, and the healing that came from continuing something they once cherished. "We'll start again," she said. From the beginning. Hazel squealed with joy as she was handed a small shovel. Ivy delicately pressed a sunflower seed into the dirt as if cradling a secret. Juniper dashed off for water, while Poppy picked her own patch of ground, declaring it had the softest sunlight. Liam stood aside, uncertain. Ethan walked up beside him and gently asked, "Do you want to plant something?" Liam shrugged. "I don't know." "Well, what do you think Grace would plant?" Ethan asked. It was the first time he had spoken her name in front of Liam without the weight of grief. Liam looked at him, then down at the soil. "Lavender," he whispered. She said it made her feel safe. Ethan nodded, his voice hoarse. "Then we'll plant lavender." In the days that followed, the garden became the heart of the house. Each afternoon, after work and school, the little family gathered there. Maya crafted hand-woven hanging baskets. Ethan installed child-sized benches. Liam taught the girls to identify flowers using a small app he'd built. Each moment slowly stitched the frayed parts of every heart into one warm thread. Even Amber, once stern and reserved, started showing up with extra batches of cookies. "I didn't know what they liked," she muttered, setting down a tin, "so I made all 3 kinds." One evening, Ethan stopped by the garage apartment, just as Maya was adjusting a crayon drawing the girls had taped to the wall. The childlike scrawl depicted a big house, lavender flowers, and 6 smiling people. "Have you thought about reopening your design firm?" Ethan asked suddenly. Maya turned, startled. "I used to think it was just an old dream, buried with the past." "No," Ethan said gently. "It was only sleeping, and you just woke it up." Maya looked back at the drawing, then turned to face him. For the first time in years, she didn't feel afraid when thinking about the future. "I'll try again," she said. Ethan smiled. "And this time, no one's going to take it from you." In a world full of unfinished beginnings, that lavender-scented dusk, with children's laughter dancing in the breeze, planted the first seeds of something stronger than dreams, a home built on trust, healing, and hands that knew how to nurture something good. The new apartment sat on the top floor of one of the buildings owned by Reynolds Innovations. It wasn't far from downtown Portland, but secluded enough to avoid the prying eyes of reporters and the curiosity of strangers. From the wide balcony, the Willamette River snaked through the city, shimmering under the late afternoon light. Once reserved for VIP clients or international partners, it had now become a refuge for 6 people trying to piece their lives back together. Ethan opened the door, a large bag of Italian takeout in hand. He hadn't expected that choosing Grace's favorite lasagna would make his chest tighten like that. It had been 3 years since he last heard his wife's laughter in their old kitchen, and despite the passing time, the memories still felt like yesterday. "I'm doing the right thing, aren't I?" he whispered as his eyes flicked toward the small photo frame he'd brought with him. Grace's portrait, her gaze still filled with warmth and love. Inside, the sound of children filled the air. Hazel and Ivy were chasing each other around the coffee table, while Juniper and Poppy scribbled across a giant sheet of paper on the living room floor. Liam, sitting on the sofa, was showing the girls how to use a drawing app on his tablet. Maya was busy putting clothes away, her face more tense than usual. "I just got off the phone with my attorney," she said quietly as Ethan set the food down on the table. "Derek has filed for temporary custody. He's claiming I took the girls without consent. He's not going to back down." Ethan nodded, unwrapping the containers, the rich scent of tomato and cheese filling the modern apartment, which was already starting to feel like a home. "I've reached out to my legal team. They'll coordinate closely with yours. Derek may have reputation, but I have evidence, witnesses, and resolve. I'm afraid this will ruin everything you've built," Maya said, eyes glossy. "I don't want you paying the price for helping me." Ethan handed her a plate of pasta and sat beside her. "Maya, if the choice is between protecting a corporate image and watching a mother lose her children, I don't need to think twice. I've lived long enough in the cold world to know what truly matters." Dinner turned out warmer than expected. The girls chatted and giggled over their food. Even Liam, usually quiet, smiled a few times. Ethan realized something strange. In hardship, people often bond faster than in normal times. After the kids had gone to bed, Maya remained in the living room, the soft lighting casting a gentle glow over her tired features. Ethan placed a hot cup of tea in front of her and sat in the chair across. "I remember my wedding day," she began, her voice echoing as if from a distant place. "Derek used to be charming, ambitious. I believed we'd be partners for life. But not long after, everything turned into control, silence, and subtle corrections I was expected to accept." Ethan listened without interrupting. Her words weren't just a personal history. They echoed the voices of so many who'd been trapped in toxic relationships. He knew too well the helplessness of betrayal. "I used to think leaving was selfish," Maya continued, staring into her tea. "But one night, Poppy woke up crying and said, 'Mommy, I'll be good. Please don't let Daddy send me away.' That's when I knew. If I didn't act, my kids would grow up knowing fear instead of love." Ethan's throat tightened. "And you did act. That's the bravest thing you've ever done." Maya looked up at him, her gaze lingering. It held more than gratitude. It held the quiet relief of being believed without having to explain everything. "And you?" she asked. "Why are you helping me?" "After everything, after Derek?" Ethan bowed his head. "Grace, my wife, she was a special education teacher. She used to say, Every child is its own universe, and not one of them deserves to be left behind. I think, if she were still here, she would have done exactly what I'm doing." Maya smiled, a tired but sincere smile. "Maybe Grace is still here, somehow, through what you're doing now." That night, Ethan didn't sleep. He sat by the window, watching the city grow quiet. What he felt for Maya and her daughters had evolved beyond compassion. It was something deeper, a sense of belonging. These small, fragile people had somehow cracked the ice around his heart that had been there since Grace's death. And Ethan knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But for the first time in years, they wouldn't have to walk it alone. The wind began to howl before the sun had fully set. Branches outside the balcony lashed against the glass like warnings from an approaching winter storm over Portland. Inside the high-rise apartment on the 12th floor, Maya was clearing the dinner table when Liam called out from the living room. "The weather report says there's a storm tonight. Gale force winds, thunder, and possible power outages." The four identical girls, Hazel, Ivy, Juniper, and Poppy, stopped building their puzzle with Liam. All eyes turned to him, worry etched clearly on each small face. Maya froze for a split second. A chill ran down her spine, not from the cold draft sneaking in through the windows, but from memories of another stormy night in another house with a man she once called husband. Ethan walked in, holding 2 mugs of hot cocoa. He caught Hazel's frightened expression. She was the most sensitive of the four, just as the first thunderclap boomed overhead. No one said a word, but the air had thickened with unease. "It's okay, kids," Ethan said gently. "We're safe. And we've got Liam here, our storm survival expert." Liam chuckled, trying to stay serious. He stood up and grabbed a flashlight from the drawer. "If the power goes out, we've got flashlights. Safe candles, too. And we're going to build a blanket fort in the living room." "Who's in?" The girls slowly relaxed. Poppy grinned, and Juniper threw her hand in the air. "I want to build the watchtower." While the kids busily assembled their blanket fortress, Maya stood silently by the window. The second clap of thunder made her flinch. She shut her eyes, her hand unconsciously gripping the dish towel in her fist. Ethan came over and handed her a still warm mug of cocoa. "You okay?" She nodded, but didn't look at him. For the first time, Ethan noticed her shoulders shaking slightly. It wasn't from the cold. He spoke softly. "You don't have to say anything. But I'm here. We're all here." Maya bit her lip. After a pause, she said hoarsely, "Back then, whenever there was a storm, Derek would get angry. He hated disruptions. The thunder, it would trigger something in him. The kids learned to be quiet, to disappear." Ethan didn't reply. He just stood there, his hand resting gently on her back, a steady anchor. In that quiet moment, understanding flowed between them without needing words. The storm outside raged louder now. Lightning streaked across the sky, thunder cracking right behind. Then, just as predicted, the lights in the apartment flickered out. In the darkness, there was a brief squeal from Ivy. Then Liam's voice rang out confidently. "It's okay. Got the flashlights right here." The soft glow of 3 little beams lit up the ceiling, casting their fort into a magical realm, like a fairy tale castle under starlight. "Let's tell ghost stories," Liam announced with excitement. "But only the funny kind. No scary ones." Hazel clutched her teddy bear tightly, but a small smile appeared on her lips. Maya and Ethan sat side by side, watching the children giggle beneath the flickering beams. That laughter drowned out the howling wind outside. A blanket fort, simple as it was, stood solid like the growing heart of a family. When the kids finally dozed off in Liam's arms, curled beneath soft covers, Ethan turned to Maya. "You've protected them with everything you have. Maybe it's time someone protected you too." She didn't reply, but in her eyes, for the first time in years, there was more than fear. There was hope. The courtroom at Multnomah County in Portland bore little resemblance to any place Maya had ever been. There was no room for hesitation, no space to hide from memories. Every eye was on her. Even those who didn't know her name were waiting to hear what the woman once married to Derek Bennett would say. Maya sat rigidly at the edge of her seat, her hands cold within Ethan's grasp. The light gray suit she wore that morning had been chosen with her daughter's input. "Mom, you look strong in this one." She smiled at the memory, then turned to Ethan. "Are you sure I'll be okay?" she whispered, eyes shimmering with anxiety. Ethan nodded. "You're more than okay, Maya. You survived the worst years of your life. This is just the moment you finally get to tell your story your way." Across the room, Derek entered like a man taking the stage. Dressed in an expensive black suit and a wine-colored tie, he offered a practiced smile to acquaintances before casting a glance at Maya, one that mixed pity with a hint of mockery. Derek's attorney began with a polished statement. "My client is a devoted father, unjustly kept from his children due to the erratic and unstable behavior of the defendant, Ms. Maya Bennett." The accusations were delivered in a calm tone, as if the speaker were unaware of the emotional wounds they inflicted on Maya. When it was Maya's turn, she stood, hands trembling slightly, heart pounding. Ethan squeezed her hand before she approached the witness stand. "Your Honor," Maya began, her voice hoarse, "I once believed that silence was the best way to protect my children. I lived in fear for 6 years, afraid that speaking the truth would cost me everything. And I nearly lost myself in the process." She took a deep breath. Derek Bennett is not the man he portrays to the public. Behind closed doors, he controlled every aspect of my life, from bank accounts to daily schedules. He isolated me from friends, family, and the career I once loved. Maya scanned the room, her gaze settling on her 4 daughters seated between Ethan and Dr. Rebecca Chun. "For my children, I endured for too long. But when they began to fear the dark, their father's voice, and the very home that should have been their sanctuary, I knew I couldn't remain silent." Her attorney presented audio recordings of Derek's outbursts, shouting, breaking objects in fits of rage. Though police had been called before, no one had testified then. These recordings were just a fraction of the evidence. Then came an unexpected development. Vanessa Moore, Derek's former personal assistant, entered calmly, holding a USB drive containing numerous emails, recordings, and internal reports. These documents revealed financial manipulation, efforts to discredit Maya, and even plans to separate the girls to prevent Maya from caring for them all. Vanessa bowed her head before the court. "I've known the truth for years, but fear kept me silent. I can't stay quiet any longer." Mrs. Parker, a teacher, recounted the girls' adjustment to school after leaving Derek. Juniper once refused to enter class without her sisters. Hazel would cry during art if someone raised their voice. But now, each girl had developed her own personality and had begun to smile again. Oregon. Dr. Rebecca Chun, a pediatrician and neighbor, provided medical records indicating the girls had shown signs of anxiety disorders due to a stressful home environment, symptoms that had diminished since living with Ethan and Maya. Each testimony added to a comprehensive picture. Maya wasn't trying to take the children from their father. She was protecting them from a world where they had no voice. Near the end of the trial, Maya spoke briefly. "I don't wish for Derek to disappear from our children's lives, if he's willing to change. But first, I need to ensure their safety. I need to believe that I have the right to be their mother." When the judge granted Maya full custody, stipulating that any contact between Derek and the girls be strictly supervised, Maya didn't cry. She simply exhaled, as if surfacing from deep water for the first time in years. Derek stood motionless, his expression cracking like a shattered mask. He said nothing as he left the courtroom, casting one last glance at Maya, only to see 4 girls embracing their mother, their eyes steady and unafraid. That evening, in the temporary apartment that had become their home, Maya sat on the sofa with Hazel resting her head in her lap, while the other 3 girls eagerly colored a new family portrait. Liam emerged from the kitchen, carrying 2 mugs of hot cocoa, one for his mother, one for Maya. "You won," he said, handing Maya the mug, his voice shy but sincere. "No, Liam," Maya replied with a smile. "We all won." Ethan entered at that moment, wearing Grace's old cardigan, a habit he had adopted whenever he felt at peace. He said nothing, simply sat down, wrapping his arms around Maya and the 4 children. A family, Not perfect, not conventional, but real. Built on truth, courage, and unconditional love. The soft morning light filtered through the ancient tree branches, casting a golden hue on the gray stone walls of the villa. A place that no longer echoed with the coldness of the past, but had become a true home for 7 souls slowly coming back to life. Ethan stood by the kitchen window, a mug of hot coffee in his hand, eyes quietly following the movement in the backyard. Maya was carefully spreading fertilizer around the lilac bushes, her hands covered in soil, but her face calm and content. The 4 little girls were giggling at the edge of a small garden plot, excitedly planting the first sprouts of what they called our very own garden. Liam, now nearly as tall as Ethan, was helping Hazel dig the earth with a small shovel. Every movement of the teenager showed how far he had come. Not the withdrawn boy he once was, but now a real big brother. Patient, steady, and quietly protective. Ethan took a sip of his coffee. The warm bitterness stirred memories deep in his chest. A year ago, he never imagined he would rediscover the meaning of the word family. He thought his heart had closed for good after Grace died. But then fate brought Maya, tired yet unyielding, and 4 frightened little girls to his doorstep on a rainy night. After everything they'd weathered, today they were planting the first seeds of their future. Maya wiped sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand and smiled as Poppy tiptoed to gently drop a sunflower seed into the earth. She chose the spot just outside her little art room, where sunlight streamed in each morning. "The flowers will smile whenever I finish a painting," Poppy whispered. "Then I think they'll smile a lot," Maya replied softly, her heart aching with quiet affection. Next to them, Ivy sat with a gardening book in her lap. She wasn't planting, she was carefully documenting the names of each flower, noting how to care for them, color-coding each entry. "If we take care of them right," she whispered to Hazel, "they'll grow just like in the book." Hazel just smiled and gently plucked her violin strings. A few notes floated into the air, as delicate and warm as a blessing for the newborn sprouts. Juniper, ever the most energetic, zipped back and forth with the watering can, soaking her shoes and the hem of her dress. "We're building a forest. Our own forest," she shouted with laughter as Liam pretended to chase her, calling out, "Careful, or you'll soak your big brother." Maya stood, brushing off her hands, watching the children with a lightness in her heart she hadn't felt in years. Once, she couldn't even imagine a peaceful day like this. After living under Derek, who controlled her every breath with words and stares, Maya thought she'd lost herself forever. But here, with Ethan and the kids, she found life again. That evening, the villa glowed warmly through its windows. Ethan and Maya prepared dinner together, such a simple thing, but once a luxury neither had dared to hope for. Toasted bread, creamy pumpkin soup, and fresh greens from their own garden were laid out neatly on the table. Hazel played a gentle melody before dinner. Ivy shared her newest fairy tale discovery. Juniper couldn't stop talking about a baby mouse she saw in the garden, making the entire family laugh. Poppy, a bit shy, approached Maya and whispered, "Mom, can I draw our family?" Maya bent down, her voice tender. "Of course you can, sweetheart." After dinner, Liam hosted a special living room performance. Juniper danced. Hazel played music. Ivy narrated an original story. And Poppy unveiled her new drawing. 5 people around a blooming tree under a starry sky. Ethan looked at the picture and felt something catch in his chest. He saw himself, not just as a successful man, but as a father, a partner, someone learning to love again. Late that night, as the house finally quieted, Ethan and Maya sat together in the garden. "I think the kids will remember today, forever," Maya murmured. "I will too," Ethan said, gently squeezing her hand. "Not just for the plants we planted, but for the love, the safety, and the hope we're growing, too." Maya rested her head on his shoulder. "I used to be afraid of hope. Now, I'm afraid not to have it." A breeze rustled the tender sprouts, shimmering under the garden lights. A tiny leaf drifted into Maya's hand. She closed her fingers around it, cradling all that was new and quietly growing inside her. The next morning, the family woke to find that Caleb, the quiet, loyal bodyguard, had built a white wooden fence around their garden. For the little princesses, he grumbled in his husky voice, then quickly turned to hide a smile. Rebecca, the neighbor and pediatrician, stopped by with a tray of medicinal herbs and instructions for calming teas and immune boosts. "Kids grow stronger in nature," she said knowingly. Mrs. Parker, hearing the news, sent Ivy a second-hand bookshelf with a handwritten note. "Reading is planting a garden in the soul." One person at a time, they were building a home, not just from bricks and wood, but from humanity. A week later, Ethan hosted a small gathering in the backyard for everyone who had supported their family. Maya stood with a microphone in her trembling hand. "We once felt lost," she said, "like we didn't belong anywhere. But the people here gave us something more precious than shelter. They gave us a sense of belonging." The four girls ran up to the front, each holding a small flower pot grown from their first seeds. They gifted them to Rebecca, Caleb, and Mrs. Parker, the first roots in the garden of their lives. Ethan stepped forward, placing a hand gently on Maya's shoulder, his eyes shining in the golden sunset. "Family doesn't always begin with blood," he said. "Sometimes it begins with the hand that reaches out at just the right time. And when those hands hold on, miracles grow." Everyone stood and applauded. And in each heart, what bloomed was not just a garden, but the faith that from brokenness, something beautiful could always be rebuilt. Spring sunlight bathed the garden behind the once cold mansion Ethan had thought would remain forever empty. But today, the air was filled with laughter, the rustle of digging, and the patter of small feet on fresh grass. The sense of blooming flowers, baked goods, and damp earth mingled, alongside the unmistakable aroma of happiness taking root. Maya knelt beside a newly planted peach tree, her hands caked with soil, but her face radiant. Hazel tied a silver ribbon around the tree's trunk. Ivy gently hung a small wind chime on a tender branch. Juniper skipped around with a watering can, accidentally splashing Poppy, who burst into giggles. Liam, once the quiet boy immersed in solitary coding, now helped his sisters secure wooden nameplates, each carved with their names and symbols representing their passions. Yet beneath the joyful bustle lay a deeper purpose, a vision Ethan had longed to share, not just for their family, but for the entire community, equals. That evening, after the children had drifted to sleep, Ethan and Maya sat on the porch, sipping hot tea as a gentle breeze rustled the lavender lining the yard. Ethan handed Maya a bundle of papers tied with rustic twine. "I want to show you something," he said, his voice warm yet tinged with anticipation. Maya unfolded the documents, her eyes widening as she scanned the pages. Detailed plans for a small community center on the land behind their garden. It featured a design studio, an art classroom, a play therapy room, and a music space, all labeled, designed for children with special needs and single-parent families. "You once mentioned wanting to build something, not just for our kids, but for mothers like you," Ethan continued. "I think it's time we make that dream a reality." Maya was speechless. She had dreamed, sketched, and hoped, but never imagined that the man who once epitomized her solitude would be the one to help her realize her dreams. "I'm scared," Maya whispered. "Scared that one day it might all disappear. That I'll lose this, just as I once lost myself." Ethan looked at her. "I'm scared too, but I believe sometimes beautiful things don't start with certainty. They begin with two people learning to trust, holding hands." A week later, they shared the plan with their close-knit community, Dr. Rebecca Chun, security guard Caleb, teacher Mrs. Parker, and several neighbors who had become dear friends. The response was not just supportive, it was enthusiastic. Caleb volunteered to oversee security for the center. Rebecca promised to offer free counseling sessions for children and parents. Mrs. Parker suggested building a small library with a storytelling corner. Hazel proposed a mini concert hall for children to try out instruments. Ivy wanted a quiet nook with soft pillows and fairy tale books. Juniper sketched a playground filled with physical challenges, while Poppy designed a mural wall for watercolor paintings. One evening, as Liam sat with Ethan, he presented a plan to integrate educational technology into each area, featuring smart devices to help children learn through experience, especially those with special needs. The 11-year-old, who once shied away from others, had become a catalyst for connection. "Dad," Liam said, looking earnestly at Ethan, "I think I've figured out what I want to do when I grow up." Ethan nodded. "I'd love to hear it. I want to build things that help people feel safe and understood." Construction began in early summer. The sounds of hammers, saws, and cheerful chatter echoed across the land. Maya, wearing a fabric hat with a pencil tucked behind her ear, guided the workers with hand-drawn diagrams. Ethan was always present, not as a supervisor, but as a laborer, carrying water, lifting planks, cleaning up. The girls donned tiny gloves, helping organize supplies, paint test walls, and label paint cans with their drawings. One afternoon, during a break, Maya stood in the center of the site, her eyes misty from the sunlight and emotion. Ethan approached her. "What are you looking at?" "I'm just trying to believe I'm not dreaming." He smiled. "If it's a dream, then let's keep dreaming together." When the center was completed, Ethan organized a small inauguration. No media, no grand speeches, just family, friends, and those who had journeyed alongside them. Each girl cut the ribbon for her favorite area. Maya, eyes gleaming with pride, led a tour of the studio where she would teach design classes to single mothers seeking new skills. Rebecca introduced the counseling room. Mrs. Parker read a short story in the cozy library. Liam, brimming with enthusiasm, showcased an interactive learning app he developed, with Poppy's help on the graphics. As the sun set, everyone gathered beneath the large cherry tree in the yard, where they had once buried their family treasure. Ethan quietly pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside was a note that read, "We will always be each other's roots." No explanation was needed. Everyone understood. That night, after everyone had left, Ethan and Maya sat together in her studio. The scent of new wood, floral tea, and chirping insects created a symphony of peace. "I believe," Ethan said, "the most precious things aren't built with money, but with time and heart." Maya held his hand, and with trust. In the corner of the yard, the peach tree stood tall, its branches reaching toward the moonlight, its young shoots growing steadily, seeking the light. Just like their family, once broken, once doubtful, now rising from the soil of love. That spring morning, sunlight gently streamed through the kitchen window, filling the room with warmth and laughter. Ethan sat at the long wooden table, sipping his coffee, his eyes following the rhythmic movements of the children as they prepared for the day. Hazel carefully placed her violin into its case. Ivy hastily flipped through the last page of her unfinished book. Juniper tightened her sneaker laces, and Poppy meticulously cleaned the paint on the frame she had completed the night before. Liam entered, holding his laptop, appearing as mature as a young man. The house, once silent and filled with sorrow, now buzzed with life, a transformation that moved Ethan each time he reflected on it. Each child, bringing their unique piece, had grown in their own way, yet remained united within the embrace of family. Hazel, the most sensitive, had showcased her innate musical talent. After participating in a school concert, she asked Ethan for formal violin lessons. Under the guidance of a private tutor and with a violin gifted by Ethan on her birthday, Hazel made remarkable progress. Evenings often saw the family pausing their activities to listen to her short performances. Maya's teary eyes during these sessions spoke volumes of unspoken sacrifices and deep love. Ivy, on the other hand, always carried a small notebook filled with stories of a vibrant, imaginary world. Ethan once stumbled upon a tale about a father who invented a machine to melt away sadness. This father, bespectacled and clumsy, was always there for his children, rain or shine. Ethan chuckled, recognizing himself in that endearing character. Ivy began sharing more and even confidently entered a state-level children's story competition, a feat she wouldn't have imagined a year prior. Juniper, energetic and strong-willed, quickly became a standout in the youth soccer team. Once hesitant and easily startled by loud noises, she now dashed across the field, leading teammates, unafraid of falls or collisions. Ethan often accompanied her to weekend practices, cherishing their post-game cocoa chats at a familiar cafe. These moments revealed Juniper's dream of becoming a coach to empower shy girls like her former self. Poppy, the quietest among the sisters, possessed a deeply artistic soul. Her room transformed into a mini art studio, a blend of colors and emotions. Maya proudly displayed Poppy's first painting, a poignant abstract of a family holding hands under a sunset in the living room. Recently, Poppy was invited to showcase her work at a children's art exhibition at the city library. During the opening, as Poppy shyly stood beside her piece, Ethan gently held her hand and whispered, "You make us all proud." And Liam, from a reserved boy mourning his mother's death, he had evolved into a steadfast pillar for his sisters. Ethan was often amazed by Liam's patience, whether teaching Hazel to code a music app or helping Ivy set up a website for her stories. Liam was developing educational software for children with special needs, a project inspired by his own loss and empathy for his siblings. His tech teacher recognized its potential, nominating him for a prestigious regional STEM scholarship. Amidst the laughter-filled breakfast, Ethan felt a surge of gratitude. There was a time he believed family was only about loss. Now he understood. Family is what we choose to nurture, love, and protect daily. Maya entered, hair neatly tied, holding documents from her studio. "Can we have a quick meeting before I head to the client appointment?" Ethan nodded. Maya was not just the woman he loved, but also his trusted partner in work and life. Her studio, Bloom Living, was gaining recognition for designing creative learning spaces for children. Ethan recalled the day she nervously presented her first design, and now she was invited to speak at a national design conference. "I was thinking," Ethan began after the children left for school, "this year's tree festival should be bigger. Let's invite the neighbors. It's a chance to share our family's journey." Maya smiled. "You're getting sentimental again." "Not really," Ethan chuckled. "I just believe what we've built shouldn't be kept to ourselves. Love grows when shared." That evening, as everyone returned home, they gathered in the living room. Hazel played a new tune. Ivy read an excerpt from her latest story. Juniper showcased her school tournament medal, and Poppy quietly presented her new painting. A house with multiple windows, each depicting a unique scene representing a family member. Ethan looked around. Every glance, every smile was a testament to what he'd long sought in vain. Ultimately, family isn't about perfection, but about hearts willing to open. When such hearts unite, they not only heal, but also flourish together. In a corner, Liam was typing code for his new app. Ethan approached, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. "How was your day?" Liam nodded. I've figured out what I want to do in the future." "Oh, tell me." "I want to help kids like my sisters. Children who need a place to learn and be understood. And I believe I can create that place through technology. Not to replace parents, but to support those like Mom, like Grace, like Maya." Ethan gently squeezed his son's shoulder. Words weren't necessary. Their eyes conveyed everything. The fireplace crackled, witnessing not just the children's growth, but also the adults who once thought they had nothing left to begin anew. In that home, no one was perfect, but everyone was genuine. In their pain, in their journey of healing, and above all, in the love they gave daily as if it were the first time. And that is family, not just a place to return to, but a place where one can be their true self, be seen, accepted, and loved, piece by piece. On an early summer morning, sunlight gently filtered through the kitchen window, casting a warm glow over the space where Maya was preparing breakfast for the family. The smell of toasted bread and freshly brewed coffee filled the air, creating an atmosphere of comfort and familiarity. Ethan walked in, holding a stack of documents, his eyes shining with excitement. "You know," he said, placing the papers on the table, We just got an invitation to speak at an education innovation conference in Seattle. They want us to share our journey. Maya looked up, her eyes lighting up. Really? That's an amazing opportunity to spread what we've learned. Ethan nodded. I think it's time we tell our story, not just to inspire, but to learn from others too. At the conference in Seattle, Ethan and Maya stood before a full auditorium, sharing their journey. From the early days filled with challenges to building a happy family and meaningful community projects. They spoke about redefining success, not as personal achievement alone, but as the ability to create positive impact in the lives of others. After the talk, many attendees came forward to shake their hands and share how inspired they felt. A teacher from a local school said, "Your story makes me want to bring meaningful changes to my classroom." Returning to Portland, Ethan and Maya decided to expand their community work. Ethan began hosting free technology workshops for seniors, helping them navigate the digital world with ease. Maya, through her company Blossom Spaces, started designing inclusive learning environments for children with special needs at local community centers. One afternoon, while Ethan was teaching a group of seniors how to use smartphones, an elderly woman said, "Thank you. I can video call my granddaughter every day now." Ethan smiled warmly, his heart full. Meanwhile, Maya was working with a group of children at the community center, helping them create their own personalized learning spaces. A boy named Alex, who had been shy and quiet at first, gradually became more confident as he joined the project. Maya noticed the change in him and felt grateful knowing her work was making a difference. One evening, the whole family gathered around the dinner table. Hazel talked about her violin class. Ivy shared a news story she had written. Juniper spoke about her recent soccer match, and Poppy showed off her latest painting. Liam, now a young man, spoke about the learning app he was developing. Ethan and Maya exchanged a glance, feeling a deep, fulfilling sense of joy. Ethan raised his glass and said, "We've been through a lot, but those challenges brought us to where we are now. Let's keep living with purpose and sharing it." Everyone raised their glasses. Laughter filled the room, blending with the sounds of life, a symphony of love, resilience, and hope. On a crisp autumn morning, soft sunlight filtered through the kitchen window, bathing the room in warmth as Maya prepared breakfast for the family. The aroma of toasted bread and freshly brewed coffee filled the air, creating a cozy and familiar atmosphere. Ethan walked in, holding a stack of documents, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "You know," he said, placing the papers on the table, "we just got an invitation to speak at an education innovation conference in Seattle. They want us to share our journey." Maya looked up, her eyes glowing. "Really? That's a wonderful opportunity to spread what we've learned." Ethan nodded. "I think it's time we tell our story, not just to inspire, but to learn from others as well." At the conference in Seattle, Ethan and Maya stood before a packed auditorium, sharing their journey. From the early days filled with hardship to building a happy family and launching projects that created real impact in the community. They spoke about redefining success, not merely as personal achievement, but as the ability to bring positive change to others' lives. After their talk, many people came forward to shake their hands and express how inspired they felt. A teacher from a local school said, "Your story makes me want to create meaningful changes in my classroom." Back in Portland, Ethan and Maya decided to expand their community work. Ethan began offering free technology workshops for seniors, helping them engage with the digital world more easily. Maya, through her company Blossom Spaces, began designing inclusive learning environments for children with special needs at community centers. One afternoon, while Ethan was teaching a group of seniors how to use smartphones, an elderly woman said, "Thank you. Now I can video call my granddaughter every day." Ethan smiled, his heart warmed by her words. Meanwhile, Maya was working with a group of children at a community center, helping them create learning spaces tailored to their needs. A shy, quiet boy named Alex slowly grew more confident through the project. Maya saw the change in him and felt joy knowing her work was making a difference. One evening, the whole family gathered around the dinner table. Hazel talked about her violin lesson. Ivy shared a news story she had written. Juniper described her recent soccer game, and Poppy proudly showed her latest painting. Liam, now a young man, spoke about the educational app he was developing. Ethan and Maya exchanged a look, both feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. Ethan raised his glass. We've faced many challenges, but those very challenges brought us here. Let's keep living with purpose and sharing what we've built. Everyone raised their glasses, and laughter filled the room, blending with the rhythms of life, a symphony of love, resilience, and hope. That spring, Portland awakened in a soft blush of blooming cherry blossoms. In the backyard garden, beneath the large cherry tree, the Reynolds Bennett family gathered together, sunlight gently casting a warm glow on each radiant face. Ethan and Maya sat side by side, their eyes filled with love as they watched their children playing nearby. Hazel, now a young woman, drew her bow across the strings of her violin, letting sweet melodies float through the air, blending with Ivy's cheerful chatter as she shared stories from the book she was writing. Juniper, holding a soccer ball, led the younger kids in a playful game, while Poppy focused intently on capturing the family scene beneath the cherry tree in her sketchbook. Liam, now a young man, sat with his laptop, finishing the final lines of code for the learning app he had been developing. Ethan looked around, his heart overflowing with gratitude. He thought back to the first days when Maya and the children had entered his life. Those early challenges, the tears, and above all, the love that had brought them together as a family. Maya reached for his hand, her eyes shining. We've come a long way, haven't we? We have, Ethan smiled. And every step has been worth it. That evening, the family gathered around the dinner table to enjoy a meal lovingly prepared by Maya. Laughter and conversation filled the room as they shared dreams and hopes for the future. Hazel wanted to become a musician. Ivy dreamed of becoming a writer. Juniper aspired to play professional soccer. Poppy hoped to open her own art studio, and Liam planned to grow his educational app to help even more children. Ethan stood and raised his glass. We've faced many challenges together, but it's love that brought us to this moment. Let's always cherish and protect that. Everyone raised their glasses, their laughter blending with the gentle rhythm of life, a symphony of love, resilience, and hope. Life is a journey full of surprises and challenges. But it is in those very moments of difficulty that we discover the true strength of love, resilience, and kindness. Always believe that each new day is a chance to begin again, to love and to be loved. Wherever you are on your journey, remember, you are not alone. Open your heart, share your story, and receive the love of those around you. Because love, freely given and received, is the most powerful miracle we can offer one another. Live fully, love deeply, and never stop hoping. Because each of us deserves a happy ending, or better yet, a new beginning full of promise. In today's fast-paced world, where people are swept up in careers, financial pressure, and social expectations, the story of Ethan and Maya offers a gentle yet profound reminder of what true happiness really means. Ethan, a successful entrepreneur, once believed that success was defined by growth charts, high-value contracts, and a quiet mansion. But in the stillness of loneliness after his wife's passing, he came to understand a deeper truth. No achievement can replace human connection, especially the bond of family. We often become obsessed with accomplishments and societal norms, forgetting the heart's most basic need, to love and to belong. Maya and her children didn't enter Ethan's life as a reward, but as an awakening. Love doesn't need to begin with perfection. It can be born from a cold, rainy night and one simple, selfless act of kindness. In real life, there are countless Mayas, single mothers carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. And just as many Ethans, successful yet lonely men, hidden behind their reputations and high walls. This story reminds us that sometimes even the smallest gesture, stopping the car in a storm, or listening when someone needs to be heard, can open the door to a brand new chapter for them and for ourselves. Happiness doesn't come from perfection, but from daily choices. The choice to forgive, the choice to trust, the choice to nurture. When Ethan accepted Maya and her children, not out of obligation, but out of love. He stepped out of the shadows of grief and into the light of a family built on love, not blood. In a world where everyone seems to be chasing something greater, this story invites us to return to what's simple: a warm meal, a child's laughter, a quiet hand held in understanding. Be kinder. Listen more. Open your heart at the right moment, because sometimes it's the small, ordinary things that bring about the most extraordinary miracles. And as Ethan learned, some beginnings aren't planned, but they can still be the greatest gifts life ever gives us. Let love, no matter how late it arrives, still bloom in its perfect season within your heart. Thank you so much for being here. Your support means everything, and I can't wait to bring you more heartfelt stories soon. Until next time, stay kind, stay inspired, and I'll see you in the next one.